Молодец. Лежать. Апорт.
Смотрите видео дрессировки собак на...
The Venetian action was very special and significantly different from that one on modern pianos. There are no screws, no bolts, and part of the case comes away by itself, spreads out. The Venetian mechanism designed by Stein and the took such people as Thomas Graf and Walter has particularly tiny hammers, small hammers in the bass and even smaller in the treble. They are not covered by felt like modern pianos, by leather, which in fact is molded or is the hammer is orientated opposite way than on the modern piano. And this piano has very single escape play edge simple terms is just key and hammer. When you play a note, so the beat presses into the statement on the spread, and as you press, the hammer rises up until it suddenly trips. It trips just before it rings. Then it drops down. This is time mechanism as it is, which is very responsible, very fast. It is very easy to play and keep perfect control. Quite expressive, allowing you to obtain a good dynamic range. Since there is a single action, the main touch is staccato based and produced from the finger, from the last two phalanges of the finger. It's still with the mort or fixed wrist technique. The sound is produced from two last phalanges of the finger plucking the tree. The mechanism of the Viennese instruments is so fragile that involvement of the larger muscles that diminish the expressiveness of the tone. Placing the player physically at the instrument, according to whom it is method book, the distance between the piano and the player's body will be as long as the distance from the elbow to the wrist. The upper arm from the shoulder down the elbows is located strictly vertically, not diagonally, but on the modern piano. This position relieves both tension and weight from the shoulder and gives an opportunity to play with fingers only. However, shoulder and elbow movements from side to side along the keyboard seems to be important because lack of those movements while using this technique lock the arm, neck, and even facial muscles. Comparing these body positions with standard body position used in our times, a player using this technique has to sit close
My piano journey began with a YouTube video. One day, I watched videos randomly on YouTube. A video named About Beginner Piano Progress, a year of practice, just popped up. In it, he was a piano beginner from scratch. Then, he's been practicing piano for 700 hours in a year. The video was shot for his progressing every month. That's amazing. I asked myself, if I play piano for a year like him, can I do it well as him? My answer is, just do it. After a few days, I bought an electric piano. I used the piano app a few days at first. And then I chose my favorite song from his playlist and started my real practice. At the end of the second month, I updated my electric piano to a used piano. I wanted my fingers more powerful and flexible, so I started practicing piano about 20 to 30 minutes a day. It has been 6 months. I'm behind him. But I really want to say thank you, Brandon. He brought piano to my life with this video. Until now, I've been playing piano for 6 months. Alright, thanks for watching this video. See you at another 6
Мы люди, и у нас есть чувства. И мы наделяем чувствами вещи.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Piano TV. Happy New Year! I am cordially welcoming you to the new year, and I'm going to invite you to practice some technique in January this month to get your fingers moving and just like get some good mojo happening with the piano. So for the next few videos, I might be doing a little bit more of a technique focus, and the one that I'm going to share with you today, the technique exercise I'm going to share, is really fast. It's really simple to grasp, and it sounds fancy. It sounds fabulous. It requires a lot of good techniques to be able to play it properly, but it's also something that I taught to kids. This is the kind of exercise that I love teaching kids, especially because they can grasp the concept intellectually, but it takes a little bit of work to execute it physically, so they understand it. And I find that whenever I would teach this to kids, they would get obsessed with it just to like get it right. So I sent home with the student, and within a week or two, they like, I mastered it. They like really like drive it out because they get so obsessed with the concept of it. So it's a great exercise for adults as well, though, because it promotes healthy technique in a couple different ways, which we'll talk about when we are at the piano. So let's try it out. All right, so we are at my piano, and the first thing that I'm going to do is actually show you the exercise, what it looks like when it's finished, so that we can break it down and figure out how to actually learn it. So I really want to talk about it beforehand, but I'm just going to show you and then we'll break it down. So I'll show you that one more time. You're going to just maybe do it a little bit differently. Very nice. It's a flourish. It's like a nice little, like fancy sounding, like it sounds very fancy. That's why I especially love teaching this to kids, adults too, because it's nice to have like the ability to, if you just sit down on a random piano and you just, well, I did it wrong this time. I don't know, when you just hack something like that together, people are going to stop and go, whoa, that was kind of interesting. So I'll show you what I'm actually doing now. All I'm doing is a C chord with the damper pedal, essentially. So I'll go in slow motion here. So I'm doing a broken C chord. So C chord is C, E, and G. Left hand, right hand. So the first motion, okay, so this is step one, C, E, G in each hand. Then what I do is I take my left hand and I put it where my right hand is. And then I take my right hand and I move it up an octave. And I do the same thing, left hand, right hand. So that's step two. So step one, step two. So it's all just C chord. And I'm holding down the damper pedal the entire time I'm doing this. So step one, step two, step three, same thing. So my left hand takes over where the right hand was. And my right hand finishes with the C on top. Because eventually we will at some point. I mean, you could end it with a broken chord, but I just think it sounds better ending on the C. So step one, step two, step three. All right, and even in slow motion, it sounds really nice. So there's a couple things that are, well, I'll talk about why this is a useful exercise in a little bit, but I want to just talk a little bit more about how to execute this properly. Because half of the fun of this one is being able to execute it fast. And that's where the challenge lies. 1, step 2, step 3. I want you to think about these sections as you figure out how to play fast. So, the first section, can you do that? Can you take these slow C chord notes and roll them almost like a guitar, C, E, G, C? You might just want to kind of practice that arpeggiated sort of, it kind of sounds like a harp, right? It's really, really important while you do this, by the way. This is one of the reasons this is a good exercise. If you want to be able to play this exercise quickly and have that nice, flourish, beautiful sound, then you really need to make sure that your fingers and your wrists stay loose. Because what you're going to want to do, what's going to be really tempting, is for your fingers to get really stiff and your wrists to lock up. So your wrist is going to get hard and your fingers are going to get hard, and you're going to end up with something that sounds like this. It sounds really almost mechanical and forced and kind of aggressive. So in order to make this sound nice, we need our wrists to be open. You can really just feel it in your body. Like if your wrist locks up, your hand doesn't move or swivel or pivot or anything. Your hand just kind of gets locked and just in position. So when I'm playing these C, E, G notes, my wrist moves. It moves from the bottom to the top. And you'll notice that as I'm playing it, my wrists aren't staying stiff and my fingers are staying nice and nimble and relaxed. And as soon as my fingers start tenting up and I get the claw fingers, that's when the sound goes out the window and it's not going to sound nice. So the being able to play fast while keeping your fingers loose is the biggest benefit of this exercise. So step 1, can you play the step 1 fast? But a really important part to be able to pull this whole thing together, to be able to do the whole thing fast, is practicing bridges. So what I mean by that is you want to play all the notes of step 1 and the first note of step 2. Because that's essentially, you're bridging over to the next part. So you're practicing that jump in the left hand. Your jump with the pinky. So I'm going C, E, G, C, E, G, pinky on C. So keeping the fingers loose, just practicing that step 1 plus the bridge motion. And we'll do the same thing. Practice step 2 plus the bridge motion, which involves that left hand jump. Now once we have that, we'll go a little slower. We're going to put both of those parts together. We're going to bridge what we just did. And this is a bigger bridge. Now I just wanted to do it slow to make sure I had it in my head, but now I should be able to... okay, so I stumbled a little bit at the end, so I got a little tough at the end, but... Oh, I stumbled just on that last landing. So then I'm doing step 1 and 2 and focusing on that fast motion. And then finally, step 3 is basically just... And I'm just practicing moving my right hand, because my right hand's over here, and then it kind of needs to jump. So I'm just practicing that jump for step 3. So bridging it all together. You want to practice those fast twitch motions. That's why I find practicing that bridge, step 1 through the bridge, just to practice that leap quickly, to be really useful. So that's how I would put this together, and you're probably not going to get it the first time you do it, but you might get it faster than you think you'll get it. And it's also just really fun to practice. What I would also suggest, if you master this with just like the C chord, then you could always apply this to different chords. So it's really fun. You can just create basically like a mini piece going from C chord, like to the 6, to the 4, to the 5. And you can make it sound really dramatic by playing around with bridge margando and a little bit of tempo bending. You can basically just like make a little mini piece out of that. But it remains that it is a fabulous finger exercise that I highly recommend you give a try. A final note that I want to add to this as well is one of the benefits of this exercise, in addition to being able to keep your fingers and wrists loose, is it allows you to practice I mean by that is just where the notes are on the keys. So if you're rapidly jumping from C to C to C in both hands are jumping across the keyboard, then it allows you to be able to map out where those notes are rapidly.
Самое главное это что? Делать надо что-то людям, понимаешь? Да хоть какой-то след оставить, да.
So if you master this in the key C, then you can really expand your this.
Ну это грубо звучит, наоборот, делать просто не значит.
So say A minor chord. Now
Не
you're
важно
practicing
просто.
finding
А зачем
A's
просто так-то сидеть? Зачем
and
допустить
finding
просто так,
A's
да?
really quickly. So that's I recommend just playing around with this exercise for about a minute.
Да не
or so.
знаешь,
You
ну
don't need to
надо.
spend a
Ну
lot
вот
of
это у
time on
меня,
that. I
ну
know
это вроде нет
that
просто.
my younger students do get obsessed with it and practice it more than a minute a day. But a minute a day for a couple weeks, I think you'll be really impressed with how quickly this comes together. And like I mentioned, of course you can try it out with the chord yourself, but do start out with the C chord to really get a grip on executing it
Да
properly
нет,
before
ну,
jumping to
ну
the
да, да.
next chord. And once you jump to
Да
the
это
next
не
chord,
важно, даже, да, да.
it's going to be a lot easier. Anyway, let's
Ну,
see how
да,
this
да.
technique goes for you. I may
Ну,
or may
да.
not be bringing in more.
Ну нет, значит, ну наоборот, значит. Наоборот.
Агенты Кингсман. Джентльмена-убийцы.
Добро пожаловать.
Кингсман. Начало. Кино с 13 января.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Piano TV. Today we're going to delve into the history, the life and times of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who was one of the craziest, most, well-known composers of the classical era. Since in the last video we learned a piece by Mozart, I thought it was only fitting that we delve a little bit deeper into this guy's personal life. So let's get started. Wolfgang Amadeus.
Ну ладно, да. Жизнь не шла. Я начальник. Нет, не профессор. Нет, нет.
Well, welcome to this talk. It's Wednesday, the 5th of January. Now, just a few orientation slides before we get down to looking at the UK and Australia and implications for the States as well today. Let's just look at some orientation here.
Что может музыкального образования, фортепианного, что может фортепианного техники? Да. Что можно отдать о себе, так сказать, Что я за эти годы я обошел? Хиропластика, ну вот это, да. Да. Да, то есть, ну, не то, наоборот, потому что, то есть, механика движения, силу, что за бред, блин? Ну да, типа, надо силу. Пианино это инструмент очень, ну, он не такой, конечно, как контрабас, или как туба. Да, здесь надо много усилий физических прикладывать. Непростой, да, типа того. Ну, чтобы, да, но в то же время ты можешь взять инструмент, как бы, в то же время можешь сопли размазывать! Ненормальное, что ли, блин, да. Ну, зависит от того, что, да, ну, понимаете. Да, ну, понимаете. Да. Нет, я тебя сразу... Да! Сразу я предупредил, что... Да. Нет, я тебя сразу предупредил, что играть не надо тебе вообще. Да. Он это имел в виду. Ну вот это имеет он в виду, да, вот это и был он самый. Ну вот это и был он, да. То есть они меня... Ты меня за кого держишь-то? То есть он это имеет в виду, да. Ну это вот про себя и думает он, да. Он понимает тебя просто, да. Ну вот это и был основной. Ну да. Ну вот это он имел в виду.
First of all, now, just starting at the
То
bottom.
есть играть ты не будешь никогда, будешь корявыми руками проговаривать 3 своих аккорда дурацких, 3 песни какие-нибудь неумные. Ну, он про это и говорил.
Japan. There is a very small increase now in
То
Japan.
есть ничего не будешь играть.
Although Japan is still a bit of a mystery to everyone, so I've arranged an interview from Japan in the next couple of days, so we should have some enlightenment on that then, because there's just nothing in the mainstream media about why cases in Japan are so low. We know they're not
Поэтому я
testing,
думаю,
but
что
cases are
у
genuine.
меня примерно такое, наверное, это связано, наверное, с тем, что я физически, как бы, ну, проблемы у меня были, впечатления были, что-то такое, физически слабые. Это не важно. Да, и с теми, там, да, с ослабленной, так скажем, психикой, что ли, или что-то, наверное, не знаю, это не суть разговора. Да, ну, короче, да, это для меня вот был челлендж, как бы, да, то есть, но, да, инструмент это сила, понимаешь, инструмент надо, да, то есть это физическая работа, в первую очередь, да, все остальное, если нету физической работы, то нету игры на инструменте, все, очень просто, настолько элементарно, да, и причем, да, и она не нежная, понимаешь, то есть она получается нежной только тогда, когда она сильная. Эта работа. Ну, в моем случае, может, только так, да. А может, нет. Ну, наверное, да, понимаю. Ну, да. Ну, да. Нужна сила, короче, да. Какого еще? Сила физическая нужна, понимаешь? Для того, чтобы играть на инструменте. Играть на фортепиано, чтобы. Нужна физическая сила. Физическая сила. Это, наверное, самое... Ну, это в моем случае. Это когда ты, наверное, супер богатырь какой-нибудь, который там сибиряк Денис Мацуев пальцем ломает клавишу. Да. Тогда ты можешь говорить, что там... Как, ну не знаю я, мне насрать. Я тебе только про себя говорю. Ну вроде не только у меня так. Да. Ну у всех, значит, так это. Я не знаю других подходов. Я не очень их понимаю и не очень, да, ну это он имел в виду. А мне это не интересно, взять инструмент, который сам нажимается, клавиатура. Да, но о себе так думает. На компьютере, на калькуляторе. Ну да.
in India, 1.4 billion people.
Это важно.
It's
Это
going
очень
to be potentially significant.
То есть это да, физический труд, физическая работа. Помимо того, что про это я даже не говорю. То есть если физическая работа и все. Точка. Да. Да. Ну, что теперь поделаешь? Да. Наоборот, проблема в том, что ты звуки не берешь просто, вот и все. У тебя сопли просто мало. Даже если он тихий, его все равно надо брать. Это сила как бы. Как это объяснишь, что? Мы не понимаем, ну я тебе говорю, это как, да, типа того. То есть они все не музыканты, ты можешь, да, сопли смазывают и все там решить, да. Меня это не касается. То есть играть они никогда, ну да, то есть, ну это меня не касается, да. Ну это он имеет в виду. Ну для них это нормально, для таких людей, там, да. Но вот это он имел в виду, да. Ну а себе, да, нет. Меня не касается. Я про инструмент, про фортепиано говорю, музыкальный, да. Ну да. Наоборот, значит, да. Ну, типа, наоборот, он про себя говорит. Они неправду говорят, понимаешь? Такое люди говорят, когда уже 10 лет отстучали уже пальцы свои, так вот в кровь вообще в дно, в музыкальных школах где-нибудь, а потом они говорят, так это там не усилия, не труда, они даже, может, сами осознанно, либо они это делают бессознательно, либо осознанно, да. Потому что они забыли, просто, может ли так, да, понимаете, да. Меня это не интересует, я тебе говорю про то, что про себя так и говорю. Единственная судьба, качество судьба, жизнь у меня одна только. И это и называется играть на инструменте. А на сопли, как каждое чмо может сопли замазывать, но даже не в этом дело. То есть это значит, ты инструментом не владеешь, просто ты не играешь, и все. Ты не музыкант, и все, и точка. То есть, это как бы не то, что даже какой-то ярлык, а просто ты не играешь, и все, и ты не можешь ничего на нем сделать. Просто ты, да, как бы, да, и ты как бы как импотент получается. И это твоя единственная жизнь, и ты будешь в ней профессиональным импотентом тогда. Ну, если еще повезет. Меня не касается, да. Ну, то есть, в том смысле профессионально, что тебе за это деньги начнут платить, может быть, это не факт. Про вас я не знаю. Ну да, берешь репертуар и играешь просто. Вот и все.
Yeah, it's just starting now. Israel, one of the more vaccinated countries, actually starting to roll out a fourth dose. Cases are going up now as Omicron starts in Israel as well. Netherlands. Now, Netherlands, interesting. Netherlands. This wave here in Netherlands is Delta. So they've had quite a strict lockdown. You've got more or less on top of that. But now, this is just the very start, we believe, of their Omicron wave. So cases will be increasing dramatically in Netherlands over the next week or two, as indeed it is in Canada now. And look at Australia. Wow, I mean, what an increase in Australia. dear me. United States, likewise, we saw the 1 million cases in the day yesterday, spreading still rapidly throughout the United States, and still got a good couple of weeks of spread to go in the States and Australia, likewise, depending on the part of Australia. But really dramatic Omicron increases. United Kingdom, again, this jiggle in the data here probably isn't real, but again, United Kingdom, Ireland, both highly vaccinated countries, and we see the immune escape, at least in terms of infection, or at least in terms of diagnosed infections, which turn up on these graphs as cases. It really is quite a dramatic graph. Now next, I think we've got one on hospital. Oh no, this next one's on variants. Now 96%. Well, the UK is at least 96%, but this is catching up now. The United States again. United States is probably well into the 90s now, at least in most areas. And we saw yesterday that the cases are increasing dramatically in every state. This is all over the United States now. Japan, well, the few cases in Japan do seem to be on Omicron, so it just seems inconceivable that Omicron won't be spreading through Japan. I mean, why wouldn't it spread through everywhere else? Strange things have happened, we'll keep an eye on it, but hopefully some clarification on that later in the week. Israel, Omicron is, as we've seen, it started. Canada, I think Canada's got much higher Omicron than that. India, this is based on very small numbers of samples. And Netherlands, as we've just seen in the graph, it's just got over a delta wave with quite dramatic restrictions on social mixing. And now Omicron's come around as well. So that's just a little bit on the variants. Now I think the next one's probably on hospitalisations. Yeah. So Israel hospitalisations are low. Netherlands, they're coming down from that delta wave now, which is good. Australia, they are increasing as we've seen. Ireland, that's the island line there, rather incomplete data in Ireland. Canada hospitalisations are going up. Now these lines look steep, but they're still not massive numbers. So that's for example 100 patients per million. So if you think of a city of 1 million people, you're getting 100 hospitalisations. And from the data from the UK, essentially no increase at all in intensive care. In some of the countries that is varying a bit. United Kingdom, so hospitalisations, again, they've gone up dramatically, and there is pressure in areas of the health service now, but again, the pressure is largely due to staff sickness, just people are off sick. Something like 10% of the staff of the health service is off sick. Other areas it is much higher proportions of people off sick. And I'm afraid the United States, we are seeing still high levels of hospitalisation. It is increasing, but it's been relatively high for some time in the States. They've just gone down from high up there. And in the States, we have to conclude that there's more comorbidities. Now, there's plenty of obesity in the UK, but there's even more in the United States. I think there's a lot of nutritional factors in the United States where the diet is often not that good, which is surprising for an advanced, rich country like the States, but the diet is often quite poor in the States. Hoping to have more on diet shortly from the COVID symptom tracker data. Some very interesting stuff on diet, actually. So that is just a bit of orientation there. Now, I think I'll just show you a couple of slides from the Office for National Statistics as well. Because there's some really dramatic stuff coming out of it. Really dramatic. I mean, here's the first one. This is for the last week, up to the 31st of December, up to the end of the year. I mean, that is the Omicron increase there. Percentage testing positive, 6% of the country testing positive if we tested everyone in the country. But thankfully hospitalizations staying relatively
Все нормально, можно играть,
stable,
короче,
up a bit.
То есть, да, понимаю. Я тебе так скажу. Если ты, да, то есть, все равно это физическая сила и физическое усилие, да, то есть, ну, наоборот, нет, он себе так, ну, да, меня это не касается. Я тебе про фортепиано говорю. И инструмент называется пианофорте, музыкальный инструмент, фортепиано. Да, свою, да, бывает. Да, наоборот, надо, я и думаю тогда, наоборот, 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 я так думал просто, да. За эти 3 года прошло. Да.
Bit as we saw, but this graph puts it in a bit more context than that previous one, so that's good to see. Deaths again, no dramatic increase in deaths, so deaths about the same, hospitalisations about the same, cases up dramatically, and it's not as if the cases have just gone up, because the cases have been going up now really for some time, from mid-December, so this is not translating. This is not translating into high levels of hospitalisation and high levels of death. Slightly increased, yes. High levels, no. In terms of vaccine in the UK, percentage received 3 doses of vaccine now, 45%. 4 in 10 adults more than have had 3 vaccine doses. This is going to prevent a lot of hospitalisations, of course, as we know. And I use that term advisedly, as we know. We do know this is going to reduce hospitalisations. Probably not going to reduce symptomatic infections that much, but it's going to reduce the severe illness and hospitalisations. We know that. 9 in 10 adults had antibodies, well over 95%, so very large amount of antibodies, and yet still getting symptomatic infections. Still getting asymptomatic infections. The infections and the symptomatic infections are breaking through the antibodies because of the immune escape. And then this parameter, the ONSU's social mixing, stayed about the same at 40. So that's from the Office for National Statistics, as is this. Now what we have here is Omicron and Delta. So this is, let's look at England first of all. Well, obviously Omicron is increased, but Delta has decreased. And this is the projection now that it's decreased even further, the projection now that it's going to increase even further in terms of Omicron. Now the Office for National Statistics have actually brought this data out a couple of days early, so they do stress it's incomplete, and they will be updating it on Friday. But it's good that they are keeping bang up to date. It really is quite impressive the way they've adapted to this. So England, Omicron up, Delta down, and we can't stress how important this is enough. We do see that the Omicron is displacing Delta. It is outcompeting it, and it is displacing it because the numbers of Delta cases are going down. It's really quite encouraging. And there's the key on top, comparable with Omicron, comparable with Delta. Wales, we see a similar pattern. Omicron up, Delta down. Northern Ireland, similar. Scotland, similar. So this is all over the UK. We're seeing this really quite encouraging trend. Now let's just look at some of this data because it's so impressive. And the same is happening in the States. The same is going to be happening in the Netherlands pretty soon. The same is happening in Australia. The same is happening in Canada. This is happening all over. In Ireland it's happening. It's happening all over the world. Areas where it's not happening now, it will be soon. We can't stop Omicron spreading around the world. All we can do is slow it down a bit.